planting necklaces of rice into mountains, taming animals, hunting many others to extinction, digging rock and mud to grow magnificent towns, even cities. But the changes that humans have made in recent decades have been on such a scale that they have altered our world beyond anything that it has ever known in its 4.5 billion year history. Our influence is no longer confined just to a local area, just to a region even. It's global and so profound it's pushing the planet into a new age that geologists are calling the Anthropocene, the age of humans. Millions of years from now, a stripe in the accumulated layers of rock will show our human fingerprint, just as dinosaur footprints reveal the age of the Jurassic or the explosion of life that marked the Cambrian. Our influence will show up as changes in the chemistry of the oceans, the loss of forests, the growth of deserts, damming of rivers, retreat of glaciers. In the fossil record, we'll see evidence of a mass extinction, the sixth perhaps, mass extinction. We'll see the abundance of domesticates, the chemical fingerprint of artificial materials such as aluminium drinks cans, plastic bags, and the footprint of projects, huge projects like a single mine in the Canadian northeast that every year moves more than twice as much sediment as all the rivers in the world combined. So Earth is now a human planet. We decide whether a forest stands or is razed, whether pandas survive or go extinct, how and where a river flows, even the temperature of the atmosphere. We are now the most numerous species on Earth, and coming up behind us are the animals that we have created through breeding to feed and serve us. 4/10 of the planet's land surface is now used to grow our food. 3/4 of the world's fresh water is controlled by us. It's an extraordinary time. In the tropics, coral reefs are disappearing at the poles, glaciers are melting, the oceans are emptying of fish because of us, islands are vanishing under rising seas, in the Arctic, new islands are appearing as the snow melts and they're revealed. No part of this planet is untouched by human influence. We have transcended natural cycles, altered the physical, chemical and biological processes of the planet. Humans have the power to heat the planet further or cool it right down. We can eliminate species or engineer entirely new ones. We've invented robots to be our slaves, computers to extend our minds. We have an ecosystem of networks with which to communicate. We've shifted our own evolutionary pathway in some of the ways that Ruth has described, but also with medical advances that now extend our lives and save those who would naturally die in infancy. We've surmounted the limitations that restrict other species by creating artificial environments and external sources of energy. A 72-year-old man now has the same chance of dying as a 30-year-old caveman. We're supernatural. We can fly without wings, die without gills. We can survive killer diseases, be resuscitated after death. We have even escaped our planet and visited our moon. The realization that we wield such planetary power requires a quite extraordinary shift in perception, fundamentally toppling the scientific, cultural and religious philosophies that define our place in the world. Up until the Middle Ages, man was considered the centre of the universe. Then came Copernicus, who put our planet in its place as just another one revolving around the sun. Then by the 19th century, Charles Darwin came along and said, humans are just another species. We're just a twig on the giant tree of life. But now the paradigm has shifted again. We're no longer just another species. Humans have become masters of our planet and integral to the destiny of life on Earth. And what about the impacts of our changed planet on us? After all, we've evolved and adapted to life in Holocene conditions. New changes have occurred very rapidly. In changing the Earth, we've been able to live longer and healthier in greater numbers than before. However, for now at least, humans are still of nature. We rely on the natural world for food, water, all our materials. We eat protein, we're made of cells. We rely on the planet to provide everything. Our growing population and the way we live in this new human world are making us more demanding than ever on the planet's resources and processes, reducing its ability to meet our needs. How will we deal with the consequences of the Anthropocene that we've created? So we've always altered ecosystems to serve our needs, and presumably will continue to do so. We've improved the planet for our own survival in a number of ways, not least that we've staved off indefinitely the next ice age. But we've also made it considerably worse in many ways. Some of these negative consequences we can overcome through technological advances, through adaptations, migrations, that sort of thing. Others we will need to reverse and try and get us back to Holocene conditions. Still others we're going to need to learn to live with. And while science may be able to identify biophysical issues, it cannot tell us how to react. That is for society to decide. Humans are no longer just another animal. We have specifically human rights. And these are expected to be achieved through development, including access to sanitation, access to electricity, even access to the internet. Delivering social justice and protecting the environment are closely linked. How poor people get rich will strongly shape the Anthropocene. The enormous impacts that we're having on our living planet are a direct consequence of the immense social changes we're undergoing, changes to how we live as a species now. We support now a massive global population, but we haven't simply multiplied the number of small hunter-gatherer communities. More than half of the world's population now lives in cities, which are artificial environments, densely packed, and they act as giant factories, consuming the world's water, energy, protein, mineral resources. Humanity operates on an industrial scale and has needs, 18 terawatts of energy at any time, 9 trillion cubic meters of water every year. Humanity has become a superorganism. The intelligence, creativity, and sociability of this superorganism is down to cumulative culture. It's the accumulation of all the brains and the past brains, the legacy, the cultural and intellectual legacy of those from the past, the artificial minds of our technological creations, the computers, the online libraries, Wikipedia. Humanity is a global network of civilization with a stream of knowledge already being channeled for our protection. And the self-awareness that comes with recognizing our planetary power also demands we question our new role. Are we just another part of nature doing what nature always does, reproducing to the limits of environmental capacity, after which we'll suffer a population crash, the famous bacterial experiment? Or are we the first species capable of self-determination, able to modulate our natural urges, our impacts on our environment, such that we can maintain habitability on this planet into the future? And what of our relationship to the rest of the natural world? Should we treat it as every other species does, as an exploitable resource to be plundered? Or does our new global power imbue us with a sense of responsibility over the natural world? So a few years ago, as Henry said, I set off. I left London and went to explore the globe at the beginning of this new human age, meeting the pioneers who are negotiating a development path through the complexity of our shared biosphere. And I found remarkable people living in extraordinary times. And as a species, we're incredibly diverse, and the Anthropocene is affecting us all in different ways. So here are the Hadzabe people. There are people living in a hunter-gatherer community, very much as we may have lived at the beginning of the Holocene as a species. So then nearby, this is the Toga family, and this community is different from the Hadzabe in obviously many ways, but one of them is that they do farming, and farming, as Ruth has already said, allows us to be settled. So it means we intensely use our environment. It means that we have already introduced new bred species of plant, grain, that didn't exist naturally in the wild. It made a big impact on the globe. This is a container ship going through the Panama Canal, and it's a reminder of our extraordinary power. So the only other way to split two continents has been through tectonic movement, and yet we've done that. And it's quite interesting that it's a container ship, because containers themselves, the invention of containers allowed for the first time very cheap transportation globally of goods, and that's one of the big spurs over this great acceleration that's occurred in the last 60 years. Another way we've altered the planet, we are altering the planet, is through extinction. These are two of the last remaining Asian lions of a species that used to extend from Sri Lanka up to Turkey. Now it's restricted to a tiny, weeny little national park in India. This is an African baby lion, and I think this picture is symbolic, actually, of our relationship now with wild animals, with the Pleistocene environment. That lion's trophy is a Jeep number plate, and that's how we see wild animals now, as on a safari, as a show. We have a very different relationship generally to wild animals. So one of the pressures that we're under, and that we've always been under, is fresh water. This is in the Thar Desert, and this is traditionally how people have stored and got access to fresh water there. And now we've stepped it up a gear. So this is a canal which is shipping water to one of the driest regions on Earth, the Thar Desert. These are Rajasthani women. So we've essentially moved a river by creating an artificial one, and we are watering the desert, and of course you can see that in lots of other places. This is an example of how I think the Anthropocene is going to accelerate the speed of the Anthropocene. Speed of the change in the next few decades is going to accelerate because of the communications revolution, which is taking off. This is a Maasai man with a smartphone. I mean, it's incredible. It's completely transforming lives. And here, this is a very remote village in northern Turkana, on the border of Ethiopia and Kenya by Sudan. And those are solar panels, tiny little solar panels on the roof of this straw hut. And they are useful because they're powering the mobile phone, which is great. However, one of the biggest challenges we face is food. It's always been food, and this is how a large proportion of the world still farms. This is a working plough in India. One of the solutions to the farming crisis is going backwards now. Instead of over the last thousands of years, we've honed in the crops, the grains that we've bred, to just a few different varieties. Most of the world just now uses relatively few different varieties. These are indigenous corn varieties, and now there is this big move to explore some of the indigenous varieties of crop that we have, and see whether they're suitable for different environments. This is a geneticist, a plant geneticist working in northern Uganda, and he's working with peanuts because they've got very high protein content, and they work really well in semi-arid conditions. And it's a variety of tools like this of getting water to people through different ways of looking at different types of. This is Bangladesh. This is people trying to grow crops on floating gardens. It's a research facility, but actually people are using this around the world. So we are endlessly adaptable, and we're going to need that. This is Tibet. Well, it's Ladakh actually in it's part on the borders of Tibet, big Tibetan population, and there's the monastery there. And as Ruth already explained, this is it's a high altitude desert. They don't get enough water. They've got very little land. And now they have the added pressure of global warming, which is melting the glaciers, the few glaciers that did provide water during irrigation time. So this incredible guy that I met, who's a local retired railway worker, has actually created artificial glaciers in the shadows of the mountains to provide irrigation water during the sowing season, and this is his glacier once it's formed. And this is the result of the glacier crops. And what it's stopping is this massive migration to Mumbai and to other big cities of the indigenous population, and perhaps allowing their culture to survive a little bit longer, their Ladakhi culture. There's a woman with her cow-yak mixture. And this is the man himself, very clever man with his crops. And then equally desperate situation in the Peruvian Andes, another high altitude desert, another global warming inflicted disaster, no glaciers, and these two alpaca farmers are painting their mountain white. This is how much they've done so far. That used to be a big glacier. They're painting it, hoping to bring back the river which fed the pasture that their alpaca lives on, so they don't have to move and migrate to Lima. On the outskirts of Lima, this guy is trying to harvest fog water using these huge nets, and it's actually very successful. He gets a lot of water off that, and he's planting trees which will hopefully eventually do the job of the nets naturally. And that's how rainforests work. So, yeah, are we going to look for completely different foods? This is Southeast Asia, very common delicacy, delicious crickets, locusts, deep fried. Insect protein, much more efficient environmentally than cows, than cattle. Very likely that's where we're going to look. But food is not the only problem. Everything we use now in the developed world relies on minerals, materials. This is the appalling mine that this guy is working at. This is a silver mine in Potosi, where zinc and other minerals come from. But what's the future of this? Well,